Tour guide tips and tricks. This one is on presentation. So giving a presentation. I've just finished doing a youth mental health first aid course over the last couple of days, and it was great. It was brilliant. The fella who was running it knew what he was talking about. However, there were some things that he, as a presenter, could have done better. And the first of those is projection. And I've spoken about that already, but I'm going to talk about it again. Naturally, when we're talking, we're going to breathe and fill up our lungs first. But when you're presenting, breathe into your diaphragm. Because when you breathe into your diaphragm, that's going to help you project your voice, so throw your voice better. And it's also going to help you hold on to air a little bit longer. I don't know what the technical terms for it. That's just how I've always referred to it as. So I did bring it up with the presenter over the 2 days. I moved from the back of the room to the front of the room because I couldn't hear him. And I still couldn't hear him after I moved to the front of the room, and I was standing right in front of him. And it was actually a lot harder for me to lip read what he was saying because the angle that I was now sitting in meant that I wasn't always able to see his mouth. So that was a bit tricky. Another thing on that note though, if you are aware that you have people in your audience who might need to lip read you, I'm a bad example of it because I do tend to run a lot of my words together just because of my ocker. But if I know there's someone who needs to lip read, I'll slow right down and I'll try and make my lip movements much clearer and enunciate better. Sometimes props are a good extra bit that you can add to a presentation. This fella didn't really need it for the course that he was running. He had the textbooks and he had a slideshow, so we were utilizing that pretty heavily. He didn't have a laser pointer as part of his presentation, but just quickly, this is something we have to stress a lot when we run our own tours at the museum. When you're using a laser pointer on presentation, especially if you have older generations on your tour, or if you can see people with eye issues, be really careful at the speed at which you use that laser pointer, because quite often people move it too quickly. So instead of zzz, there, okay, that's where I'm pointing at, that's nothing. They can't follow that. So instead be like, I am pointing here. This is the thing we're now talking about, and this is the information you need to learn about this thing. I'm going to do another video on laser pointers because that's pretty important. And finally, timing. This fella, he did a really good job at managing our time. We actually finished early both days, which we were all surprised about because we kept going off on tangents and having discussions amongst the group and being like, oh, but this versus that and this versus that, context, stuff like that. So when you have a question-led presentation or tour, just be very mindful that there is going to need to be discussion time and allowing the appropriate amount of time for that to happen. Cheers! I hope this was helpful.